Recorded.
This is a meeting of the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, Thursday, May 21st, 2020. Call to order pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Harwich, this should be Affordable Housing Trust, is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by logging in or calling in as specified above on this agenda. Mr. Chairman, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. Before we open it, I have to poll everybody. So Brendan, are you here?
Aye.
Larry?
I am present.
Judith? *6 if you want to talk. Oh, there you are. Judith, can I count you?
Your audio's not working.
You're on mute.
You've muted yourself somehow, Judith.
Tap the microphone icon.
Is your microphone on the bottom of the screen, Judith? There should be a circle with a little microphone. If it's not green, it's not gonna be on.
Judith, if you just call in and leave your video on and leave the audio off on the computer, you'll be fine.
Can you hear us, Judith? Not if you can.
Smile.
She's probably better for the experience.
Okay, sorry. Judith, you're back on the phone?
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just putting that on mute.
Okay. All right, so we polled everybody. Judith, are you present?
I'm present.
Thank you. Okay, let's move along. I told everybody that was in the room in advance of this. We're going to be moving along, and the feature of this is Laura. So, minutes. Got to look for a motion.
That's so moved.
Well, okay, so it's motioned by Larry and it's seconded by Brendan. Either that or it was a peace symbol. So any further discussion? Hearing none. Brendan?
No.
Is that a no?
I'm sorry. Yeah, aye. Yes.
Yeah, you can't make a motion and vote against it. Larry?
Yes. Aye.
Judith?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Joe is like 10 feet underwater right now. He definitely is planning on becoming part of this, but not today.
Mr. Howell, did you vote yes?
Yes. I was taking the traditional chair role of being mum because we had a majority. All right. Was that for both sets of minutes? Because it's listed as 2, and don't everybody speak at once.
Larry, was your motion for both sets of minutes or only the first set of minutes?
Both.
Both.
Okay. So, moving on. This, as I said, this is basically the meat of the meeting, and I appreciate Laura Schufelt being on the call with us, because before we get started, I just want to make everybody aware that we've suspended activities with Jan Goldsman until we can actually get some community engagement of that. this is the major thing that we're looking to bring forward as a tangible proof that we're doing something. So with that, Laura, you want to talk about this? Is at the back of the HJT building on Sisson Road.
Sure. Thanks, Don. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. I want to introduce my colleague, Katie Bossy. She's on my screen. She's all the way over to the right, but I don't know where she is on yours. She's assisting me on this. I did send a PowerPoint presentation along, and I can go through it. We've talked about these points in the past. So can we, Linda or Andrea, can we share a screen? I don't know who's hosting. Or Charlene? No? Okay, so I guess I'll just talk about the site first and what I hope to accomplish today. Have a little bit of a discussion on the the due diligence that we've already done. I'm getting feedback. I don't know if anyone else is. Anyway.
I just muted you because I think it was coming from you.
Okay, thanks. It's better. So the site on Sisson Road is what we're talking about. What I'd like to do today is do a brief overview of what the due diligence said. We've already talked about that once, but just to refresh your memory, how many units or how many bedrooms Bowler Engineering felt could be put on the site using septic. But what I want to get down to today is getting your goals, get a consensus of what your goals are for the property. And that would, consist of kind of a range of units, how many, or a maximum number of units that you would like to see, what kind of design standards or design preferences you'd like to see. You cannot, we've talked about this in the past, you can't design the project or dictate a design, but you can put parameters around what's going to be there. If you want it to comply and be in compliance with historic district requirements, and then affordability. I think those are, and maybe what green design or other special things you'd like to see in the RFP. My goal is to get consensus on those topics today, and Katie and I will come back before your next meeting with a first draft of an RFP. And at that time, we'll be able to get into the nitty gritty and talk about, what gets prioritized over other things. And like for affordability, do you want all of them affordable? Would that be extra bonus if they have it affordable? So those are the kind of decisions that have to be made that I'd like to get some idea of what you're thinking for the site now, and whether the group can reach some kind of consensus on some of those big ticket items.
Laura, before you go any further, I just want everybody to understand as part of our group, because they've got varying levels of familiarity with this. There's an underlying basic RFP structure, but and these bonus considerations that we use in evaluations, everybody needs to understand they have to be in the RFP going out, or you can't make an evaluation for them.
Right. And there's threshold evaluation, so everyone has to meet A, B, and C. Usually it's around developer experience, could be around affordability, and then in the then if they get through the threshold, then there's comparative evaluation, and things are kind of scored, not advantageous, advantageous, and highly advantageous. And you can assign points to it so that you can come up with kind of an objective review of the proposals. And that's what you're trying to get to is to have your criteria clear enough so that the developer knows what you want, knows what they can get bonus points for, or extra points for, or highest point for, and that it's not, that it's as objective as you can be in kind of a, subjective field where you're looking at design and you're picking the one you like best, but you have to have clear direction to do that. All right. So anyone have questions on that? Great. So the site is a little over an acre. It is part of the historic district. So if a developer was going to use 40B for zoning, for permitting, which they probably would have to, technically they don't have to meet your historic district requirements, but that's a decision that you can make, that would be threshold that they have to do that or not. That would be bonus points if they do. Okay. Bowler's conceptual layout for septic shows 16 bedrooms in 4 buildings. So I think you've all seen that. You can see what that means for the site, and you can kind of gauge whether that's a appropriate use of the site, too congested, or not enough. Can we, instead of doing 16 units, if it's 16 bedrooms, you may or may not want to have all 1 bedrooms anyway. So to that point around bedrooms, in order to get state funding or to get a 40B, there is a 10% 3-bedroom rule, unless there are demographics and you can prove that the need or the site dictates that the need for a 3-bedroom, or that the site is not appropriate for a 3-bedroom. And it's kind of more on need than it is the site. But if you can prove that you have an overwhelming need for 1 bedrooms or 1 and 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms, then you wouldn't have to. So it's 10% or 1 unit, pretty much. So if you did 8 units, technically you would have to do 1 3-bedroom unit. So that's another decision that, we can talk about if you wanted to move forward trying to get a waiver.
Or is that 3-bedroom one, is that inextricably yoked to the affordability part of the 40B? Or could that be the market rate unit?
I think it could be the market rate unit. You just need to have 10% 3 bedrooms in the project. But I'll double check the language, but I think it could be market. Your house, Katie went through your housing production plan to see what the needs were. Very low income, 43% of your renters earn below 80% of area median income, and we're spending more than half of their income on housing. So, no one has to tell you there's an affordability problem and a availability problem for affordable housing. I think, there was the affordability, the lack of options for affordable units or for downsizing or families, special needs housing and improved housing conditions. So some of the stock is old, and we can't solve that problem. We can just do production right now. So the basic principles of an RFP: understanding the feasibility, complying with 30B procurement guidelines. That's where I'll say that the the town can have control in the RFP to a certain extent, again, not design, and then after you award the project, it follows the same development path as if it wasn't an RFP, as if it was a private developer. So you can't, make monthly inspections or do anything different than what you would do if it was anyone else developing and it wasn't your land in the first place. It's, I like to be clear and realistic in your goals. So if you want to do something, and I always test it with financial feasibility before, we agree to move on. If you wanted to do 4 units there, it would be, you wouldn't be able to get any outside money. So you'd have to only have subsidy from the town. You have to have at least 5, and in some cases 8 units to get state funding. So if you said you were going to do 4 units, it probably would not be financially feasible. I'd run how much you'd need to, contribute, but I think clear, realistic, and realistic being both what you'll be happy with when it's done, but also that it would be attractive to a developer, and it would get done, and it would get done in the way that you want it done.
Does 2 quads hit that threshold?
I'm sorry?
Does 2 quads hit that threshold?
Sure, that's 8 units. Yep. So we'll work to design the RFP to state your goals, give enough information. These are all things, we can just kind of skip through the disposition. So step 1, developing goals. That's where we are, and I'm kind of going to stop there so that we can get to what your goals are. And I think the first goal, I think, would be around either number of bedrooms or number of units that you want to see there, because we either put a range in or a maximum, or if you leave it open without putting a maximum, you're not giving, developers will put as much as they can put on there. So because the more units, the more feasible it is. So I'm going to stop and let's have a discussion about what number of units or number of bedrooms you would like to see there.
Before everybody starts, I just want to frame the discussion. I had a conversation with Laura about this. The property has a history. We did have RFPs, and there was one from Hack that was 8 units per building, and then there was one from Hesh that was 2 quads of 4 units per building. One of the impediments we had back then that helped us completely collapse was there was some basically the union of convergence of interests between the HJT and the neighbors that kind of formed an opposition to it. Right now we have in our pocket the HJT is supportful of this. They get to keep their building and they think it's a terrific idea. I'm hoping that whatever we come out of this with recognizes that we don't want to lose them, because we got to pick up the neighbors too. And any support that we can start with would be better than starting at 0. So with that, does anybody want to say anything? Because these meetings are kind of difficult. So just let me recognize it.
Don, if I might, I'm going to suggest that you call on each board member for comments, and then, because I have certain people muted.
Okay.
Not board members, but, because of feedback. But if Art Bowden, for instance, had comments, I want to give him the opportunity. So if you can ask each individual member and then audience, that would be the best.
As long as you promise me not to tell my wife about the mute button.
Okay.
Okay, Larry, let's start with you. Speaking of the mute button.
Larry, you're muted on your end.
Oh, I'm not muted. I'm just being.
He's just joking.
I think I would give high bonus points for affordability. I think that's what we're looking for, the more affordable we could find, the better. I would hope we don't try to cram the site with way too many units, so it's a reasonable and fits in, and maybe a couple of buildings to make things a little bit better, because that should cut down on maintenance costs. So maybe a couple of quads, but if we're going with 4 duplexes, it makes it a lot more awkward and it looks a lot different. So having said that, I guess my final comment would be I would like to see action faster than slower. The faster, the better. That's it.
Thank you, Larry. Judith?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Now we can.
I agree with Larry. I think affordability is key. I like the idea about a 3-bedroom, but if we have other things coming down the road, maybe we can satisfy that at that point. But I think speed is absolutely important here.
You done?
I'm done. Roger. Over.
We got to get you on mute again, though, because you're echoing. Okay, Brendan.
Just a quick question. I don't know if you would know this, but I'm trying to look at the plans. The square footage, if there were 16 units, what's the square footage on each unit?
I'm sorry, if there was how many units?
Well, it's proposed for 16 in that drawing. Do you know what the square footage is? Or
Yeah, I think there was 700 square feet. They were one bedroom, and that's the lit minimum.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think affordability is very important, and I think historic would also play a factor as far as making that a requirement, or at least have some advice from them on this. So yeah, those are my 2 points: affordability and historic.
Thank you, Brendan. Charlene?
I'm wondering, Laura, if the historic could be bonus points, that the more in keeping with the neighborhood, that would be more of a bonus point thing? Or can we actually say it needs to be historic looking in nature?
You can say it needs to be historic looking. You can say it needs to comply with the requirements of the district.
Okay.
You could be that strict.
Okay.
I haven't looked at the restrictions. I haven't looked at the historic district restrictions. So, but I will. Are they?
They're not as onerous as, say, Old Kings Highway.
Okay.
They're reasonable.
If they're reasonable, then it's not worth the fight to not comply with it, especially given where it is, on that section of the road.
Here's the problem with that.
What's the problem?
That would actually augur to putting it over in the bonus category rather than the underlying category. The problem with that is if you cede that point, then you're ceding the jurisdiction, the Historic District Commission, to weigh in on the plan. If you give it as a bonus, that part becomes less onerous on the overall project when you're evaluating it. I don't want to see this get so hung up that it gets caught up in a review by the Historic District Commission, which isn't really the focus of what we're trying to do. I'd rather see that as a bonus.
Actually, if I might, they don't actually get technical review. They can review things. I got to take this off. They can review just like the planning board will be reviewing the, other boards and committees in town. They'll have the opportunity to review, but it won't take their approval. But if they meet the standards, then historic hopefully will just go, yep, this looks great. Here's our comments.
That's correct.
Yeah,
I'm actually
I
on.
would like to see that as an inducement.
Can I ask a quick question just for clarity? So the historic district can't come back and say you must do X, Y, and Z? No. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I was shaking my head instead of speaking.
Brendan, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
All I could say to you, though, is that I remember Mr. Murray used to say this to me. It's like if you start getting other people involved, there's still going to be a discussion, and it's going to wind up not necessarily being under your control. If this is a bonus, it's still something extra to show that we're really interested in getting that. But we can't hamper this to the point where it's a small scale project and we tell them that, yes, but we want balconies on every unit and we want an elevator. If we start lathering this up with too much stuff that they've got to achieve, there's not going to be an economy to anybody wanting to bid on it. So if we get them in the door and get them qualified at a certain level, and then we articulate bonus points to get to the point that would be our perfect project, that would probably be a better approach than putting it all in the base level and rolling the dice and hoping that somebody even wants to bid it.
Okay, well, I will we'll draft it as highly advantageous and work with language in the narrative that that speaks to that it would be highly preferable to do that. So we can do that.
Now, what do your milestones look like?
For getting this done?
Yeah, because I mean, this is the beginning step, but I'm sure you want other things. You're going to draft something, we're going to review it, and when do you anticipate that you want these things on a timeline to occur? Recognizing that Larry wants it to have been built yesterday.
Me too. Well, I think we can get a first draft out before your next meeting, which I think is June
Something.
15th or somewhere around there.
You're stepping on my surprise. It's going to be a live meeting, guys.
And sorry about that. And then we can come back and, hopefully everyone can review it before that meeting, come back with their edits. We can work it through. Depends whether we need, more than, it usually takes more than one series of edits to get a final. We still have, when we know the maximum number of units, we still have Bowler on the hook to do some conceptual plans that would actually, like they did before, put units, but then put units that more reflect what you want on the site. They can do that at any time that we know, what the maximum would be. So that won't add time. It just is something that would go into the request for proposals. And then it's just a matter of gathering the, the information, the deed, any other information we need that would go with the request for proposal. Once we have, so say we have it finalized in July, by your July meeting, which is kind of fast, but probably can be done. Then I think, you could get it out probably in August, July, August, probably August, and usually give 60 days response. So September, October, that would be October. And then it usually takes a month to score an award. So you could, theoretically, you could have somebody ready, a developer on board by the end of the year, and funding for, if funding follows a traditional schedule, funding for a small project like this, applications are due in March, and usually middle of March. So if you had someone on board in December, they could realistically at least get a first application in. The small projects, typically, unlike larger projects, it's 1 to 2 years to get funded, where nothing else gets funded the first year. So it theoretically could get first year if permitting wasn't going to be a problem, or there wasn't any major obstacles to for them moving forward. So that's I think what the timeline is, how I see the timeline, and I'll put that in I'll write it out for you for your next, with the RFP, what an aggressive, a realistic, and a pessimistic schedule would be. So
my point was, in terms of leaving this meeting, is that we can expect to see the beginning of that progress line start at our next meeting.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
John, you want to see if Art has any comments?
I was just going to open it up to anybody who's called into the meeting, but you have to identify who you are, and I have to recognize you. So with that, if you're on audio and you want to get into this platform, you probably have to dial *6 in order for us to
I just unmuted Art, so if he wants to speak, he should be able to.
Okay, and I unmuted myself also. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Art Bowden, Harwich Housing Committee. Yeah, all the comments I've heard so far are really good. Larry, Brennan, everybody's, I think, heading in the right direction. And I like it sooner than later, and I would look at the 2 to 3 building type of affairs instead of 4, but that's that. One thing I think I can bring to the table, though, is I personally know the closest abutter, the property owner closest to this project. And I think that owner will be in favor of this. And the reason I say that is because she doesn't live on Cape Cod right at the moment. She lives in Connecticut, and she's active in Habitat in Connecticut. So she's on board with affordable housing.
Take her out to supper.
I don't think I even have to do that.
That was my point about these Zoom meetings, because in part what we're going to have to do is do some basic building block work in the community, so that this thing is supported by people instead of shoved down their throats.
So her property abuts, as you're looking at the property, it's the property immediately to the right, the house on the corner of Sisson and Forest there. She owns that. So I'll reach out to her now and just at least preliminary and see, if what her thinking is. I can't guarantee anything, because you never know how these things always play out, But I don't think there'll be any problem with that abutter, at least.
Terrific.
And then the one on the left-hand side has already committed themselves. So we've got 2 primary butters that look very favorable, and so that's a big plus going in. Anyways, everything I've heard so far is spot on. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that we haven't covered that's out there that does want to talk about this particular subject? Apparently a fax machine is on the line.
yeah.
Andrea.
Yeah, in the past, this committee has talked about the community engagement, and it was mentioned at the housing forum that this trust held before last year's town meeting. And of course, community outreach is mentioned in Laura's presentation on page 16 of the packet. I'm curious, Laura, how a community engagement approach or strategy affects the timeline, and what the trust is thinking about in terms of outreach.
So usually after you get a final draft or a semi-final draft of the RFP, what can typically happen is then you you meet with stakeholders, and you go through the, particulars of the RFP, the high points of what you're looking for to get support. I know in Wellfleet, we thought that it was going to be a 2 to 3 meeting process, and the community they had an open public meeting. The community was satisfied with 1 meeting and wanted it to move forward. In Provincetown, they did 3. Again, open public meetings with some focus groups. In Brewster, they did 3, but they did it before they wrote the RFP. I think this project doesn't have a lot of options. It's not a lot of, well, are we going to do 40 units or are we going to do 50 units kind of thing. So some of those questions are already answered. So it's really down to affordability and, and just the fact that you are going to be, you do want to build on this site. That's, getting support for that, for affordable housing. But some of the big questions around various sizes and access and all that, the site isn't big enough to have those questions there.
In the interest of time, guys, can I actually say that can we put that as part of the discussion that we know we're going to have in our next month's meeting as part of the action plan for this? That, how we would get the community engagement, what that would look like, and how many meetings? Mm-hmm. Right now, we've agreed that the concept is what we want. And I think we've given Laura enough to start putting something to paper so that we could look at a real tangible something or other.
Right. The one caveat I would say is affordability. I've heard that everyone's in favor of, as much as affordability as possible, but what does that mean? Does that mean 80% and below? Does it mean 60% or below? Does it mean Summit, extremely low income? Is the threshold going to be 25%? Is the threshold going to be 50%? Or is the threshold 100%?
I don't know how anybody else thinks about this, but one of the things that we've been discussing was a concept where, let's say it was 25 or 30% of true capital A, and then trying to give bonus points for the next tier, something that's lower middle class market rate, or middle class market rate, so that normally they would try to offset that with their 75 by going full market rate as much as they could get away with. But if we could get something out of that, so that the next component of market rate is at the lower tier market rate. I was hopeful we could do something like that, but Larry's probably right, and everybody else said it too. Judith did, and Brendan did. Is that it's hard to know what that number is, but it would definitely. If we could get half, that would be real nice. But I don't see how they can financially throw in on this as a viable project if we started saying 3/4 of it is going to be affordable or 100% of it at this magnitude of a project.
Well, the state funding is based on how many affordable units you have. So you get the funding for the affordable units. So for the small projects, you can get $1 million, say for 10 units. So, or $1 million for 5 units, $200,000 per unit with a maximum of $1 million is the way it was last year. So if you have 8 units, it would make sense to do at least 5 of them affordable, because then you could max out the $1 million. So it will depend on, some of it depends on financing. They're better off with the $200,000 a unit than market rate.
Well, let me go around the horn then. Does 5 sound like a good number, Brendan?
I mean, if it's 8 units, I mean, it's more than 50%. I mean, yeah, it sounds good. I just have to put more thought into it.
Okay. Larry?
Fine by me. Fine by me.
Judith?
Yeah, I think that's fine by me. Are there other ways of financing this if it's a smaller project? Can we take more money out of a trust to balance out? So if there were 8 units or 10 units, if we had 3/4 of the units be affordable, that the trust somehow makes up the difference from what state monies that we could get?
I think what you're talking about there, if I can interrupt there, Judith, is that likely is not, our big contribution would be the land itself. So that would represent a huge percent or a very high percentage of the total development cost on an 8-unit development.
Okay, so that'll allow the builders to meet their needs.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also county home funds, but that's at a lower, that's a lower income target. But there are ways to get all 8 of them financed. But the easiest way is to use the small projects. And in the past, you could use 200,000 up to 10 units. So we'll see what they do this year. But given the budget.
We got to move it along a little bit. But again, if you could put the pen to paper and give us some bullet points about what those options might be so that we have something tangible to discuss, then we've got enough for you to start, is my point.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, if there's nobody else that has anything else to discuss, I really appreciate Laura and Katie being on the call. I'm looking forward to seeing something so that we can act on it. And again, we're going to be in the Griffin Room by next month from all accounts, which should make this less painful.
All right.
Thanks again.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
How do I get out of this?
Okay, moving along, the update on the housing coordinator contract.
Yeah, for anybody who wants to leave, on the bottom, there's a leave button.
You saying that to me or Larry or? I didn't think so. Anyway, the housing coordinator contract, I don't know much more than I knew from last week. I floated the conversation. I know that Jay wants to talk to me, and I know that we're running up against procurement law, so I got to find out what's possible as opposed to what everybody wants. So what I'll have to admit, my major priority was to get you paid for what you already have done as opposed to talking about what you're going to be doing. I know that doesn't get you where you want to go, but then again, we're on a computer and I'm not where I want to be either. So I promise you I'll pursue that. But that's what that's all about, guys, because we have a contract starting July 1st. There's 2 of me out there. Does anybody want to weigh in on that subject? Okay, moving along. David, are you still on?
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Okay, so you want to make a pitch on behalf of the Housing Assistance Corp for rental assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to give you all an overview of what our program is doing and maybe open it up for some questions. First of all, I'm Dave Quinn with Housing Assistance Corporation, the Director of Housing Development. And so my primary role is working on developing new housing. So I was really interested in that conversation you all just had. But I'm also working with towns right now to try to set up a workforce housing relief fund. And so obviously this started a couple months ago with the emergence of COVID-19. And we immediately, as an organization, we're concerned about the impact that this would have on renters in the region. And so we wanted to start thinking about what we could do as an organization to try to assist those in need, especially people who are sort of outside of the range of the normal government assistance programs. So HAC actually manages a pretty good chunk of money through the RAF program, which is a state program. So we actually administer $700,000 of approximately $700,000 of funds through the state through a RAF program that provides rental assistance for people who are at or below 50% AMI. So that's something that we're doing on an annual basis. On average, we support. Getting a little echo here. I don't know if someone's on mute there. Okay, that's better. On average, we support about 500 households a year through this program. And so we felt like we were really well set up to be an agency that could administer funds for this additional tier of people. So we went out and we started trying to raise money to expand our resources to be able to do this. So far, we've raised about $700,500. That's a combination of some of our own funds internally, some private foundation money, seeking private donations, and then also working with several affordable housing trusts around the Cape to contribute money to the fund as well for use for their residents. And our goal for the fund is 1.5 million, which would allow us to support about 300 families over the next several months. And essentially, we have it, like I said, we have it set up so that when people come into our office, we're already set up with an intake process where we can have them meet with the housing counselor, determine what their need is, what type of program they would be program that we should devote them to. So, for example, if somebody comes in and they'll determine if they're under 50% AMI, we're going to have them fall under the RAF program. However, we're seeing a lot more people coming in and requesting funds that are people who would not be eligible for those funds. So we've set up a special housing counselor who works specifically with those people, and we go through a process of vetting them, making sure that they are determining their income, their need, and then each month making a decision about distributing funds to those that are in the most need. And so really we can customize this for each individual town. Like I said, we have sort of funds that are available to the entire region that we've raised privately. And then a couple of towns have set up their own separate funds that we're administering through the same program. So if there are specific criteria that you might have as a town and you wanted to use housing trust money, we could incorporate that into the program and do that as well. So I know we're short on time, so that's a sort of the high level overview of the program. We do expect that we're going to see quite an increase probably in the next month or two as people's unemployment payments expire. People are going through savings. So we're just trying to be prepared and have funds available if there is an increase in the need in the region. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, let me start out with the good news part here, the happy part. Can you this is being recorded, it's going to be on YouTube, the public's going to see it. So if someone in the public wanted to either get a charitable that they belong to earmark money to you, or they want to donate directly, how might they do that?
They can go directly to our website, which is hackoncapecod.org, and actually the landing page right there. This will be right on the landing page with information on how you can donate, or you can just give our office a call as well. So we're absolutely taking donations specifically for this fund.
Now the bad news. At least my part of the trust. I'm pretty sure I know how Charlene feels, but I'm going to weigh in myself. We don't have an action plan. We got under $1 million. We got some property. We haven't built anything. We haven't moved anybody in anything. I'm wanting to do anything towards rental assistance at this point because it's not durable. We can give you $100,000, and at the end of the day, we'll have somebody there being helped for a short period of time. but it's not a fixed asset that we'd be able to have people live in for, say, a decade or so. We're not in a position where we've done anything tangible. If some of those other places, I suspect have already taken action on other fronts, and this is an additional front for them. But I'm more than happy to hear from the rest of the folks. Larry?
I'll pass for a minute. I'll listen to everybody else.
Okay, Judith?
I was just going to pass to Charlene. She looked like did you have a point you want to make before we have a discussion?
Really, if we start having everybody talk all at the same time.
Well,
Charlene?
You said you were speaking for me. You're not.
No, I said I suspect I know how you feel, and I'm going to talk about how I feel first.
Okay. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I'll keep my opinions to myself. I think there is a need and a place for housing assistance at this point, so we don't create people being homeless. But that's my only comment.
I get that. I was just trying to be transparent that if this were brought up to a vote, I wouldn't support it. So for this thing at this time. Brendan?
Yeah, I got the point what you're trying to say there, Don. I mean, we have a lot to prove in a way. It seems from some feedback that we've gotten so far, and to jump on something before we even have a plan in place, I understand that point. So, I mean, I've put a little more thought to it, but I think there's a need for both there. There is a need, and then there's also a need for us to hold back on big decisions on giving money out. So,
well, just to clarify, what I was really talking about, that is even the near term with this project that we talked about with Laura. We don't know how much we may actually have to kick in, and we have about 800-something thousand right now that's banked. Let's say we get the CPC approval in September, because that's probably when it's going to come up for a vote. That tips us over $1 million, but I don't know whether disbursement's going to look like on a particular project as an incentive. We don't know an awful lot of stuff that's out there right now. Larry?
I think, well, I understand exactly what David is saying, and the fact that the virus and the economic situation likely is not going to improve over the next couple of months. But I would suggest that perhaps we put this on not off the table, but somewhere further down the table, so that we can get a little determination from Laura on what we're going to do. Number one, how the economic situation is going, number two, and how the project is going, number three. And having said that, keep that there in abeyance, if you wish, so that we could perhaps in a couple of months, if things become more desperate, and I suspect they're going to, that's my feeling, David will certainly take our call then.
All right, Andrea and Belinda, can you put that down? Because like I said, you don't want to table this because that's a mechanism in itself that's a legal mechanism. Can you put it down that it's our intent to bring this back in 2 meetings for another discussion?
Bring that, first of all, I'd say bring it back next month. We can evaluate the economic situation. And then the following month, if we don't take any action, then we'll look at it again. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yeah, leave it on the agenda as a talking point for here on until we tell you to take it off.
Okay.
Did you want to open this up for other comments?
Sure.
Can I just ask a quick question? And
Yes.
David, this is not town dependent, correct? I mean, you guys are servicing everybody throughout the Cape and Islands.
I'm sorry, I missed that. You said, is it town dependent?
I said it's not. If I understand correctly, it is not town dependent. You're servicing everyone from Provincetown to Falmouth to Bourne.
That's correct. And I actually just checked before this call, and we have dispersed funds to 3 Harwich families so far. I think it's something around $7,000 of funds. So right now, Harwich residents, of course, it's a regional program, can apply just like any other town. And we're just trying to anticipate what the need may be in the coming months. And so if towns do it, obviously each town has different amounts of money available in their trust. And so, it depends on obviously what other projects you have planned and your availability of funds. But we just want to make sure that towns are thinking about this as a potential use. And we're obviously happy to keep track of exactly the calls that we get to the office. We track things pretty closely in terms of what types of calls we get, requests, what towns they're from. So we have good information about what the need is, and we can track that on a month-to-month basis and report back to you all.
And are you also working directly with the state as far as the regulatory piece of anybody being moved out of their housing if they can't pay their rent or their mortgage? Or is that the Cape Cod Commission or the county?
Right now,
the state legislators.
Yeah, right. I mean, right now there is a moratorium on evictions. So people aren't being evicted from their homes right now. However, I do think we might have an issue in a few months when that's lifted. Tenants are still going to be required to pay the past due rent. So you might have a situation where people are not keeping up, but staying in the home. And then at some point when the moratorium's over and the courts open up again, you might see an increase in evictions. So that's something we're also keeping an eye on.
But to Charlene's point, is there anybody who is not on the screen here in Hollywood Squares that wants to say something? All right, David. So we'll have this as a standing agenda item. We'll bring it back next month, and if we want to, we'll bring it back the month after that again.
All righty. Thank you very much.
You can't know what you don't know if you don't know it. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right, moving along, discussion and possible vote to authorize chair to expend trust funds to determine the costs of the move of Holy Trinity. I know Brendan's going to say that he has to recuse himself. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
We'll just watch you do cooking behind you as we're talking. It looks like a chef's show. Geez, my kitchen looks so nice. Anyway. I don't know what you guys want to do with this. I mean, really what it isn't about taking any action. It's just to authorize, if you want to, authorize me to spend some money to look at, can it be moved and is it even worth moving, depending on when you're expecting it. But there's a tick-tock going on because they've got a demolition delay where that building's sitting there right now. But from what I gathered about the Catholic Church is they fully intend to take it down if something doesn't happen where somebody wants to buy it and move it.
I would be in favor of spending funds to explore that. I think that's a smart thing, and I think the community, I think the feedback that we got from the community that they want to at least have that explored and put to rest one way or the other.
Larry?
I would say, Mr. Chairman, we should certainly go and see what it's going to cost to do it, and perhaps see if we can find a parcel of land relatively close to its current location, see what it would cost to move. So the total of moving it and setting a new foundation, I think, is worthwhile exploring. We could get that number by next month, and if that was the case, we could move the damn thing sometime in the summer. That'll really put the summer residents happy.
Well, the reason it was on the agenda, though, is because it's probably going to require us to have somebody do a home inspection to see that it's not going to just completely fall apart if we try to move it, or that it's worth moving.
I think the folks that move houses do that. That's part of the...
Yeah, but we probably want to evaluate what it is inside so that we know that we actually are interested in it.
Oh, so, okay. So a regular home inspection, not necessarily just about moving it. I see what you're saying. Yes, but absolutely.
If you want to do that, there has to be a motion for a not to exceed number.
I would move then, Mr. Chairman, that we authorize the expenditure of funds to inspect the home for its livability and usefulness, and to evaluate the cost of moving the home. And hopefully we could get it done by next month. And if that was the case, I mean, up to $5,000, would that be a reasonable estimate?
I would think. How about you folks, Charlene?
I agree.
All right, yeah, let's start with that. Right now we got 0, so 5,000 is 5,000 more than what we got right now. But then you'd have to authorize the chair to expend up to that amount.
I would
second that motion.
The one that he was about ready to make.
and include
Oh, no, I thought his previous, sorry.
including that motion, Judith, the authorization for the chairman to expend up to $5,000.
I'll second that.
There we go. All right, got a poll. Larry?
I'm in favor, Mr. Chairman.
Judith?
Yes.
And I'm a vote for, and there's one abstention who's left the room, a recusal.
It doesn't show as an abstention in the minutes. It just shows that he recused.
Yeah, okay. Brennan, you can come back unless dinner's not ready yet.
We're having lobster and filet mignon.
At his expense. All right. Housing coordinator report.
Do you want to do member reports first?
No, I was going to do that as a combination with the agenda building. Oh, okay, it's up there. In the future, if you want to, because that's why that's there. I want this to be a shared experience where people feel that they've got some input in it. So it's one and the same to me. To agenda build, I'm not going to do anything without some input from them. So they may actually want to be yoked together.
Sure. I'm going to start because the 2 first bullets are meetings that I'm actually running myself. So I guess I should introduce myself, right? I'm Andrea Aldana. I'm the Director of Housing Advocacy at the Community Development Partnership and part of the contracted housing coordinator team for the town. So these are just some quick updates. I wanted to let you all know, in case you're not aware, that starting in April, the CDP convened a Lower Cape coronavirus housing response meeting. This is an extension of the quarterly peer group meetings that we've been doing for the past few years, with a focus on getting updates from each town on how they are approaching housing initiatives during the pandemic and keeping them on the front burner. Our next meeting is actually taking place tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we're going to have the Cape Cod Commission coming in and doing an update on county data related resources that are available, small business updates, etc. So if you go to our website, you can actually download the full agenda and register if you are interested. It is, of course, free, and we may be holding these meetings monthly for the next few months. The next thing I wanted to update you on is a group that the CDP is convening that actually came out of the April coronavirus housing response meeting we held. So at that April meeting, one of the outcomes was that a lot of towns really wanted to have a discussion about having a regional approach to rental assistance. So they asked the CDP to convene a working group, which is called the Lower Cape Rental Assistance Program Working Group. That just started meeting this week and will be meeting weekly at least through June. The goal of that group is to develop, first of all, to quantify the need on the Lower Cape specifically for rental assistance, and to decide whether or not they want to move forward with developing either a regionally administered program or a regional set of standards that's based in our communities. And that's an ongoing conversation. Next week, the conversation is going to be focused on understanding need and getting some data together. So that is a group made up of one representative from each town and also one representative from the social service organizations on the Lower Cape that currently administer rental assistance. And I'll be happy to report back at the next meeting on where they are. So those are my updates.
And I'll go next. My name is Belinda Deegan, Housing Advocacy Program Manager at Community Development Partnership. I am also part of the Housing Coordinator team, and I'll be reporting on the trust balance.
I'm sorry, excuse me, because people would have to pick up on the nexus between what you're saying. What you first said was on behalf of the Community Development Partnership. The second part of that is tethered to the Affordable Housing Trust of Harwich.
Yes, sorry,
Go on.
I missed that, yeah. Thank you for clearing that up. So as I said, I am reporting on the trust balance. The total for CPC articles, $778,620. The balance for the cell towers is $93,398, so the total is $872,1800.
Now, I want everybody to know this because I had reported to Dave Nixon over this. Since we have a pot of money, but there was discrete flows from different places. It was my position in giving them a report on the status of CPC expenditures that we spent the money for the housing coordinators and from J.M. Golson out of the cell tower money. So that they're not bent out of shape, that we're not actually doing a project with it. They're concerned that we're just going to fritter it away and not come out of it with anything. And it's a legitimate concern. So the report of the money was we haven't touched their money. We still had, yes.
Yes, you have touched their money because there was money allocated from CPC to fund the housing coordinator.
In year one, I don't know that that was
you as well.
Okay.
That was money from the housing, from the CPC articles. So money for the housing coordinator did come out of the CPC funds that were received.
Well, actually, I got to make absolutely certain when with Carol about what she actually did when she paid, where she took it from.
The money based on the spreadsheet that she provided today is the money came out of the CPC articles, not from the tower.
I get that. I don't want to contradict you, but that is a matter between her and I that she never discussed with me about how she allocated it. So if that's how she did it, that's what the budget, that's fine. But I'm just saying that all of what she got was, this is a trial balance as much as anything else in my eyes until I know for a fact that that's what she spent it on. But that's fine. But my bigger point is that I don't want Dave Nixon and the CPC people to think, they're thinking that we just are literally just going to fritter it away. And so my discussions with them is that we're going to stay as close to the vest with their money as we possibly can. So, okay, but again, I'm going to make absolutely certain that Carol did do that way when she paid everything. But that still doesn't, by the way, account for what the contract is going to be from July 1st forward. And I can't give that answer now. All right, let's move along though. We got to go around the table here to the trust members about what they want to see coming up for the purposes of agenda building. Larry?
Again, as we talked about, I'd like to see, it seems like we're moving relatively well this meeting. The next meeting, we're going to have an RFP to look at and perhaps have some information on the church and perhaps have some more information. I'd like for you to be able, Mr. Chairman, when the town meeting occurs, that you'll be able to have some positive results to report to the town meeting so we can get some more money. So having said that, I think we're making relatively good progress and we should move forward as quickly as we can.
Excellent thoughts. And Belinda, you got down the agenda suggestions. Judith?
Just given the COVID situation, I would request if it fits into Belinda's time frame, if just thinking forward about community engagement, the community engagement process, what would be a backup community engagement process if come July the state buckles back down and we go back into this kind of situation? Are there any kind of models out there that we can look at or replicate or think about how we could do this equitably in this kind of situation?
Okay, we'll add that. I mean, we have been, I can assure you, we have been having ongoing discussions about what would constitute real community engagement. So, because honestly, we have not done a lot of spade work in the soil to try to grow that support. And then this hit, that was a comment at the selectmen's meeting yesterday. We all felt like we had more progress in that one meeting than the last 9 or 10 virtual meetings we had. These are very clunky, and they get clunkier when you start getting to 100 or 150 people. Unless
I'm just thinking, I'm just following a lot of the different science researchers that I'm reading and in touch with, and there's a real possibility that there's going to be another wave of this, and that going forward, community engagement is going to look really different. It would be great if we could be prepared so we could move, and I know as a town, it's the same challenge, but.
Okay, we got it. Brendan.
Not much more to add, just really excited about Laura's presentation and the potential RFP and a forum that may follow after that. So yeah, just excited about that.
Terrific. So what's the next date? Let's assume that we are able to use the Griffin Room with appropriate social distancing.
Go ahead. I'll listen.
I think it's June 18th.
June 18th. I'm going to have to run that past Joe, though, because we're trying to coordinate this. That's pretty much the only room we're planning on using in the building for meetings when we first start up. So I just want to make sure that we're not bumping into anybody, but let's count that as our tentative meeting date.
Yeah, at 2 in the afternoon, it should not be a problem. But we can check.
I'm hoping you're right. So I'll shoot for that, too. Anything else, anybody? Really appreciate it.
Hey, everybody.
Art Bowden here.
Mr. Chairman, after the trip back from Florida, I'm very impressed how Massachusetts is reacting. I mean, Florida is another world out there. When we left, you could barely get a place in the parking lots at the beaches. They were just jammed to the gunnels, bar rooms packed. You wouldn't believe it.
I would. My daughter lives there. My daughter lives there, and I live here, and I like it that way, Larry. It's Art.
I think this weekend you're going to see a lot of that, Larry, unfortunately.
Don, I believe Art had something.
I know. I just.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Art Bowden. I just have a couple of comments, and maybe I'm amiss, so someone jump in if I am on the topic of the rental assistance. Our own Harwich Housing Authority has an application into CPC for $200,000. I thought that was approved.
It is, and it will be. Got to go to town meeting.
Okay. So, it seems like everyone is forming their own rental assistance program here. We have one, and now
lowercase. But Charlene's got to go, and it's going to be agenda. Next meeting. Nothing's going to between now and
how many different checkbooks do we need?
That's kind of what I was saying, but let's have that discussion when.
Okay, I'll relent and save it for next time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, having said that, I move we adjourn.
It's been moved to be adjourned. Judith, do you have a second, or Brendan?
A second.
Okay, let's go around the horn here. Larry?
I'm in favor of my motion.
Judith?
Yes.
Brendan?
In favor of Larry's motion.
Okay. Be safe, everybody.
Hey, everybody be safe. Thank you ever so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.